I am not exaggerating when I say that the implications of what I'm going to share in this video are truly enormous. In fact, this may very well be one of the more important videos I've ever made. And by the end of this video, you will see exactly why. So with that said, here we go. The so-called Osiris Shaft is one of the more enigmatic remnants on the Giza Plateau, an anomaly that gets far less attention than that of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, as most people are completely unaware that a sophisticated, multi-level subterranean series of chambers and shafts extends some 100 feet down into the Giza Plateau, carved directly into limestone bedrock, an exceptionally impressive yet mysterious accomplishment that perplexes many archaeologists to this day. Located between the Great Sphinx and the Second Pyramid and directly underneath the Sphinx's legendary causeway, this magnificent site is not accessible to the general public, and access is only authorized through special access permission, which can only be granted by the Egyptian ministry upon request from licensed Egyptian tour guides, which also includes a rather large fee ranging from $500 up to $750 per person. This structure is made up of three tiered levels consisting of subterranean chambers which are connected by three separate individual shafts that descend further and further down into the bedrock under Giza. In fact, the first shaft descends some 12 feet or 4 meters, which opens to the first level or vestibule, which is an empty chamber which then connects to the second shaft, which then descends into a dark, nerve-wracking plunge of over 52 feet or 16 meters, and opens to the chamber on the second level, which consists of 6 individual burial compartments, some of which include stone sarcophagi. From here, you have access to the third and final shaft, which descends another 33 feet or 10 meters, reaching a final depth of 98.5 feet down underneath the Giza Plateau, so deep into the earth that a lack of fresh air and oxygen, along with a buildup of carbon monoxide, has been known to give people headaches and queasiness after only a short while. And upon descending some 100 feet underground, the shaft immediately leads to a once incredibly impressive burial chamber consisting of an island tomb surrounded by a moat of water, which has since been completely flooded by the Nile River's water table over the last couple thousand years. And although the astonishing Osiris Shaft is unknown to a vast majority of people, including many who have visited Egypt, as keep in mind that the site is simply not advertised, and the only entrance to it is an unmarked locked gate next to the Sphinx's causeway. However, many people may at least recall that it is the site in which Mr. Beast famously swam in when he went to Egypt last year. And I had the great privilege of going inside the Osiris Shaft back in 2020, which was a dream come true, as I had desired to visit this site for years. Perhaps just as much as I wanted to go inside the Great Pyramid, and my own personal fascination with the Osiris Shaft came from a highly interesting Fox special that aired back in 1999, which featured everyone's favorite Egyptologist, often referred to as Egypt's Indiana Jones, Dr. Zahi Hawass himself. And this televised special included certain details involving legitimate mysteries that made this site completely unforgettable to me. In fact, let me show you a short edited clip so that way we can all be on the same page, as there are some things that were discussed in this special from 27 years ago that are going to become exceptionally important for what I'm going to share with you in this video. So check it out, it's only 3 minutes and every second of it is worth your time.
About 2,500 years ago, the Greek historian Herodotus, who I guess you could call the world's first foreign correspondent, visited this site. Local villagers and guides told him that he could find the tomb of a king buried deep beneath the Giza Plateau. Well, about a year ago, Dr. Zahi Hawass, who joins me here at the mouth of the shaft, embarked on what he calls his greatest adventure ever. Zahi, you've been doing this for some 30 years. Why is this so amazing?
You know, Susie, it's amazing because this is the first time that they excavate underneath 100 feet in water. Before, excavate on sand and dirt. And also at the same time, I discovered that this is what Herodotus talked about. And I found that this is the tomb of Osiris. Let's go and see what we're talking about.
Our first descent is about 20 feet, a chance to get warmed up to the rickety, rusty ladders. Now it gets intimidating. The second leg is a major drop, as the shaft narrows before opening to a room once obscured by dirt and sand. Zahi and his men cleared it to find a burial chamber with 6 rooms. So this is the second level, 55 feet down, right?
Yeah,
What did you find here?
You know, I excavated this part. I found 6 rooms cut in the rock.
And what made you think that there was anything beyond this?
You have to look for the other level. This is the adventure. Let me take you to show you the most amazing thing that you'll ever see in your life.
Oh my. Upon discovery, the 3rd level was submerged. When the water was pumped out, Dr. Hawass had the find of his life. No fear of the unknown?
Yes, but there is great adventure. Adventure in archaeology.
So we're 100 feet down now. What is this?
Susie, this is the tomb of Osiris.
The god of the underworld. This once extravagant mausoleum, a moat with 4 pillars engraved with hieroglyphics constructed thousands of years ago, was intended to be a symbolic shrine for the keeper of the afterlife.
If you will look down here, I will show you what is here. Look, there is the second part of the sarcophagus. Goes down, I think about 1 feet down. And up, you see what we did. The lid is up. You want to see the length of that lid? Okay, let us watch out. Let us see.
How much would something like this weigh?
Oh, the weight of this was 11 to 12 tons. What's the length?
Just about 9 feet.
9 feet. Then the whole lid and the second part is about 11 to 12 tons weight.
Informative, right? But there are a couple things to mention right off the bat. Aside from the massive endeavor of physically carving out the entire Osiris Shaft complex out of bedrock and putting aside the mystery as to how they did it, because of course archaeologists claim that it must surely have been done with copper chisels and literal stone hammers, which is honestly absurd, but never mind that for a second. Did you hear how heavy he said the sarcophagus is? The lid alone was estimated at 11 to 12 tons, which is almost equivalent to 2 African elephants. But look at the sheer size of the main portion of the stone sarcophagus. Again, 9 feet in length. This box, including the lid, must surely have been at least 30 tons in total, probably a lot more. How on earth did they even get it down here? And by the way, let's not forget, this tomb consisted of 2 individual stone boxes, the smallest of which placed directly inside the large one. But these impressive details aside, my question is, whatever happened to the forthcoming discovery waiting to be found inside the smaller, submerged stone sarcophagus that was underneath 12 inches of water? Which, again, according to Zahi Hawass, was believed to be the long-lost tomb of the Egyptian god Osiris. A pending discovery dating all the way back to 1999, but the story, for whatever reason, went completely flat afterwards. I never found an update or an answer as to what they found inside. And this is where things start to get very interesting. I had the special opportunity to debate Zahi Hawass on Piers Morgan Uncensored in July of last year. It was a rather provocative conversation as I firmly pressed him for answers on a number of interesting topics, which I think many of you would enjoy watching. However, at that time, I had intended on directly asking him about whatever happened to the 1999 Osiris Shaft discovery, but unfortunately, I was not able to bring it up in that conversation. But thankfully, just a few days ago, Piers Morgan's team reached out to me to schedule a second debate versus Zahi Hawass, which we recorded just a few days ago and went live on Friday, May 15th. And this time, I made sure to let Piers' team know ahead of time that this must be a topic of conversation. And fortunately, Piers took note of it. Listen closely to exactly what Zahi said. So I guess my question for Zahi, I'd very much like to know is, what did you find inside that sarcophagus?
Okay.
And
when I opened the sarcophagus, it was completely empty. Because Osiris is a myth. He's the one who controlled the underground tunnels at Giza. Because Giza, this is, and this why there is no mummy that we found. And all of this, we published that this is the tomb of symbolic burial of the tomb of Osiris, who control the underground tunnels at Giza Plateau. But there is no mummy. This is the first time I hear about a mummy found in this sarcophagus.
So you heard him very clearly articulate that the sarcophagus was completely empty, that the burial chamber was nothing more than symbolic, meaning that nothing was ever buried there in the first place. And he even went on to say that this was the first time that he was hearing of an alleged discovery of a mummy found inside the sarcophagus. Now, when Zahi said that, I believed him, and I even clarified during the debate that I did not think he was lying, as I took what he said in good faith. And to be completely honest, I missed the memo that they had apparently already gone inside the sarcophagus and found nothing inside of it. And to be crystal clear, that is exactly what I found to be the case following the interview when I read various published articles around the internet, all claiming that the sarcophagus was indeed found to be empty. In fact, even the fact-checking website, Snopes, which let's just say I don't see eye to eye with in many cases, but even they listed the claim that a tomb containing the mummy of Osiris having been found was false, and went on to specifically state that the sarcophagus found within the Osiris Shaft in Giza was indeed empty and was simply meant to symbolize Osiris's rule of the underworld. But never mind Snopes, because even the prestigious Encyclopedia Britannica specifically annotates that the sarcophagus located on the third and lowest level, some 30 meters down, was found perfectly preserved and empty. Well, I guess that means that this is case closed and there's nothing to see here. Of course, the ancient Egyptians would have went to such an extreme endeavor to dig out a 30-meter deep, multi-chambered pit of bedrock down directly to a water source so they could create a sophisticated symbolic island tomb with a moat and pillars with hieroglyphs, only to seal it up, hiding it in the bowels of the Giza Plateau for eternity, all for pretend. Makes sense, right? But that's the thing. That actually doesn't make much sense to me at all. And when the debate ended, I had a weird feeling in my gut, and I decided to do some additional digging into it. And this is the part of the video where things get very, very interesting. You see, during the debate, Zahi shared something which wasn't included in the debate I just shared earlier, but he had gone on to essentially say that the fact that the sarcophagus was empty was no secret, as they had officially published their findings on it many years ago. But with that gut feeling I had, I took it upon myself to find the specific archaeological publication that he spoke of, which led me to the Harvard University website, which had posted the publication on behalf of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, dated to 2007, which Zahi Hawass himself is listed as an author. In it, you can find very specific details involving the Osiris Shaft, which details the archaeological findings from their excavations into and throughout the subterranean structure. However, when we read the specific details involving what they found on the third and lowest level, including the excavation of this specific sarcophagus, it describes something far, far different than what Zahi had said about finding it, and I quote, completely empty. Are you ready for this? Quote, the remains of a skeleton were discovered in the sarcophagus. I'm sorry, what? Did I read that right? Yes, the publication very clearly articulates what was found on each individual level and very clearly describes that this is indeed the very sarcophagus in question, located on the third level down, even illustrating the tomb itself, its described measurements, and the detailing of skeletal remains as well as other various ancient Egyptian relics had indeed been discovered inside this very sarcophagus. How can this be? After all, Egypt's most renowned Egyptologist, Dr. Zahi Hawass, very clearly expressed that it was completely empty.
When I opened the sarcophagus, it was completely empty.
He also said it was nothing more than a symbolic relic.
Because Osiris is a myth. And this is why there is no mummy that we found. That this is the tomb of symbolic burial of the tomb of Osiris.
And he even went on to say that he had never even heard of a mummy that was found inside.
But there is no mummy. This is the first time I hear about a mummy found in this sarcophagus.
Now, during the debate, Piers Morgan called me out asking why would Zahi have any reason to lie about anything? And my response to that was that one of the reasons would be to uphold the known official long-standing narrative and historical timeline that we've all been taught in school about the ancient Egyptians. I mean, Zahi himself refuses to even acknowledge the Sphinx's water erosion, which very clearly and scientifically dates the Great Sphinx back several thousand years older than what we were taught. But the one thing I was going to say in response to Piers, but I bit my tongue out of respect, and keep in mind, while not realizing that Zahi had just told such an enormous lie about the sarcophagus being completely empty, was that Zahi Hawass himself has been previously implicated in illicit conduct, specifically in the facilitation of looting and sales of black market antiquities trade back in 2011. And it resulted in his ouster from the governmental position he had as the Supreme Minister of Antiquities for Egypt. In fact, he had received many accusations for many years before all of this came to a head. And although in the end he was never held accountable legally in court, many believe that he was let off the hook through his powerful political and tenured connections. So with all of this said so far, do you want to hear what I think really happened? Well, get ready, as this is quite provocative. Whoever, looted it. It is a known fact that countless amounts of ancient Egyptian artifacts have been stolen and sold on the illegal antiquities market for many decades, and the financial incentive to do so is far higher than most people would ever imagine. In fact, a 2011 estimate claimed that the black market for ancient Egyptian mummies and other artifacts was estimated to be $2 to $6 billion per year. Let that sink in. It's clear that extremely wealthy people are fascinated by ancient civilizations, and they are presumably decorating their private collections with it. I mean, who else could afford such a thing? And this sarcophagus discovery was all the way back in 1999, many years before Zahi had finally been implicated. Who knows what truly happened, but it is extremely suspicious to say the least. But what we do know is that the world was led to believe that the sarcophagus was found empty, but it wasn't. So now the question becomes, what exactly happened to the skeletal remains of who was found in this stone box? And is it unreasonable to suggest that it was looted? I mean, why else would they want to pretend it was empty? Now hold that thought, because if everything I've shared so far isn't already interesting enough, wait until you hear this. There is significant, tangible reason to believe that the tomb of Osiris is actually the true burial ground of the pharaoh Khufu, the great king who has long been credited to have been the builder of the Great Pyramids. And if you think that's far-fetched, here are some fascinating details which relatively few people are aware of. Approximately 2,500 years ago, the famous Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt and documented many things. One of which is rather mind-blowing, in that he had written about a magnificent subterranean tomb which strikingly matches the Osiris Shaft, and specifically what's found down in its third level, describing a deep underground burial chamber below Giza, and even describing a moat which encircled an island tomb which contained the resting place of Cheops, also known as Khufu, the pharaoh who has been said to have constructed the Great Pyramid. Herodotus wrote this down some 2,500 years ago, which, by the way, was nearly 2,000 years after the Osiris Shaft complex was initially created. And here we are now, some 2,500 years later, finding the Osiris Shaft, which matches Herodotus' description virtually to a T. And it should also be mentioned that this site wasn't even documented in modern times until the year 1837, and excavations did not begin until the 1930s. And then, finally, decades later, in 1999, Zahi Hawass opens the secondary sarcophagus submerged in water and discovers skeletal remains along with other ancient relics, but only to spend the following decades personally denying that anything was ever found in it whatsoever. This is crazy. So circling back to my point of what I think really happened, guys, does this not qualify as a literal archaeological cover-up? And if so, what would their motivations be to do so? Well, perhaps they discovered the tomb of Khufu, and then it was perhaps sold on the black market for what would undoubtedly be an unbelievably high sum of money. I mean, if the Egyptian market is $2 to $6 billion per year, what would Khufu go for? Or another possibility is that they discovered the skeletal remains of someone who dates back far earlier than the pyramids are said to be, because that would upend and debunk virtually their whole narrative. And would that not potentially be cause for them to want to keep this a secret? Or maybe they found body parts of an extraterrestrial being and decided to keep it top secret. Wild idea, of course. But what we know is that skeletal remains were there, and now they're not. So the question becomes, where the hell are they now? And while we ponder what may have actually happened, I find it particularly intriguing that there is zero sense of urgency to go inside the mysterious and massive hidden chamber that was discovered inside the Great Pyramid. Although this discovery was formally published back in 2017, the physical discovery itself first happened in 2016, which is a whopping 10 years ago now. A decade. And they still don't have a definitive date on when they will go inside and see what's waiting to be discovered. Zahi claims that they're going to do more scans next month in June, and the soonest they may enter inside the hidden void is in November of this year. But nothing is definitive, and no specific date or plan is in writing. And by the way, let's not forget that Zahi claimed that they'd enter it by the end of 2025, and that came and went. So what is going on? I mean, seriously, make it make sense. The most mysterious structure in all of human history, which is supposedly the tomb of a pharaoh, and they have the opportunity to possibly discover Khufu, or whoever, which would finally end the decades-long debate on whether the Great Pyramid was actually built to be a tomb for a pharaoh in the first place, and yet they somehow have no pressing desire to go in and find out? You see, that makes me think they know something that we don't. Perhaps they already went inside and excavated it in secret, or perhaps they already know that there is no mummy inside because the pyramid was never built to be a tomb in the first place, or perhaps they already discovered the tomb of Khufu down within the Osiris Shaft 27 years ago, but will never admit that the theory that the pyramids were built to be tombs is false, as it would upend their entire life's work, which textbooks have already been written, sold, and taught in universities for decades. Whatever the true reasons are, it makes no feasible sense why they haven't explored what's inside and why they still have no definitive plan to do so. Something doesn't add up. And I do generally think people need to consider the real possibility that the Osiris Shaft may have been the true resting place of Khufu. And the very fact that it's exactly where Herodotus described, well, I trust Herodotus 2,500 years ago far more than I discuss the archaeologists running the show today. And by the way, one more thing. Notice that the massive sarcophagus inside the Osiris Shaft is far more impressive than the crude, shoddy stone box found inside the Great Pyramid. They're not even remotely comparable. I honestly think that the Osiris Shaft makes far more sense to be the resting place of an actual pharaoh. And again, do you really believe that they did all this for symbolic reasons? Really? And aside from the missing skeletal remains, where are the 4 incredible pillars or obelisks containing hieroglyphs which were described as being part of this tomb? Where are they now? I sure don't recall ever seeing those in the Cairo Museum. Did they loot those too? It's just a question, and although I'm not specifically accusing anyone of anything, if nothing else, this appears to be a coordinated attempt to conceal the truth, whatever it may be. I consider the details I shared in this video to be exceptionally important. People need to be aware of this situation, as it may stand to be arguably the biggest cover-up in all of archaeological history. I mean, what if they actually found Khufu and hid it and sold them? So please take a moment to share this video across whether social media, Reddit, with friends or family. It's only through enough exposure that we'll have any chance of getting answers to these questions. And maybe we will once and for all be able to solve the mystery of the Osiris Shaft. With all that said, leave a comment and share your thoughts on everything I discussed in this video. What do you think really happened here? But that said, my name's Jimmy Corsetti, my channel is called Bright Insight. Leave a comment, hit the like button and subscribe, and stay tuned as I have another provocative video for you very soon. Take care, everybody.